You just negotiated a raise, the number your boss gave you was $10,000. It felt real on the offer letter. But then you looked at your actual paycheck. The math didn't match, only $5,800 of it actually landed in your account. The other $4,200 vanished into federal taxes, Social Security, Medicare, and something else most people don't realize exists until it's too late. By the end of this, you'll see exactly where that money went, and why it matters so much that you understand this before your next raise hits. Within the next few minutes, I'm going to show you the exact tax mechanics that steal nearly half your raises. The reason it happens isn't criminal, it's actually built into how the tax code works. And most people never notice it because they're not looking at the right numbers. If you've ever felt like your paycheck doesn't match your salary, this is the explanation that finally makes sense. Take a second and think about something. What percentage of your raise do you think you actually keep? Most people guess their tax bracket maybe 22% gets taken out, so they keep 78%. That guess is going to feel embarrassing once you see the real number. The system is more complicated than that. And in a moment, I'll explain exactly why. Let's start with what seems simple but isn't. When you earn more money, three things happen at the same time. Your income gets taxed at a higher rate, your deductions start disappearing, and your tax credits start shrinking. Most explanations stop at the first one. But it's the other two that create the trap. Your paychecks get hit with federal income tax. That's the bracket number 22%, 24%, whatever applies to your income level. But then another 765% leaves before you even see the check. Social Security and Medicare taxes. Those two alone add up to roughly 30% of your raise if you're in that 22% bracket. Nobody talks about this combination when they explain tax brackets. They just show you the federal number in isolation. The real damage happens deeper. There are income thresholds where benefits start disappearing. The education loan interest deduction, for example, starts fading out if you're married and earning above $175,000. The child tax credit starts disappearing above $400. 000. These aren't small reductions. They're entire deductions and credits being taken away from you as your income crosses an invisible line. And when that happens, the effective tax rate on your raise spikes without any bracket change at all. Here's where I'll show you the detailed math for different income levels so you can see exactly where the trap catches most people. Imagine you're earning $100,000 single, and you get a $10,000 raise. You cross from $100,000 to $110,000. Both amounts fall in the 22% federal bracket. So far, so good. 22% times $10,000 equals $2,200 in federal tax. Then 765% times $10,000 equals $765 in Social Security and Medicare combined. Net result, you keep $7,035. That's a 70% take-home rate on your raise. Not great, but not devastating. You're keeping most of it. Now jump to a different scenario. You're married, filing jointly, earning $150,000 combined. Same $10,000 raised to $160,000. Still in the 22% bracket. The math looks the same: $2,200 federal, $765 FICA, leaving $7,035 for now. No phase-outs are kicking in. You're in a clean zone. But watch what happens if you were earning $190,000 instead. This is where the trap actually closes. At $190,000 married filing jointly, you're in the middle of a phase-out zone for the education loan interest deduction. The deduction starts disappearing at $175,000 and completely vanishes at $205,000. Your $10,000 raise moves you $10 to 000. Deeper into that phase-out range, for every $2 of income over $175,000, you lose $1 of deduction since you're moving from $190,000 to $200,000. You're losing $5,000 worth of deduction capacity. But you can only lose what you have. If your education loan interest deduction is $2,500, that entire thing disappears. You've hit a threshold where a deduction that was previously available to you simply vanishes. That $2,500 deduction, when multiplied by your 22% tax bracket, means $550 in additional tax you now owe. So your real breakdown is $2, $200 federal, plus $765 FICA, plus $550 from the lost deduction, equals $3,515 in total tax on a $10,000 raise. You're only keeping $6,485. That's a 35% effective rate, not the 22% your bracket suggestive. But if you were earning $200,000 and crossed into $210,000, the math gets worse. You're now deep enough in the phase-out zone that the entire $2,500 education loan interest deduction is already gone. But you're also approaching another threshold, the 24% federal bracket, which kicks in at $211, $401. So that next dollar you earn is taxed at 24% instead of 22%. That 2% difference doesn't sound like much until you multiply it across your whole raise. It adds up to another $200 in federal tax. This is bracket creep working against you. The moment you cross certain income levels, the rate on your raise jumps without any announcement. It just happens in the code. Most people miss this. Now here's the part that changes everything about how you should think about getting a raise. For self-employed people, the math is completely different and significantly worse. If you run a solo business and you earned $150,000 in net income, a $10,000 increase in business income doesn't just get hit with federal tax and FICA. You have to pay self-employment tax, which is actually both the employee and employer portion of Social Security and Medicare taxes combined. That's 153% of your net income, not 765%. The calculation shifts entirely. Federal income tax at 22%, $2,200. Self-employment tax at 153% on $9,235 of income, roughly $1, $396. You're already at $3,596 in total taxes before any other calculations. You're down to $6,404 from your $10,000 raise. That's a 36% effective rate. And if you're in the 24% bracket as a self-employed person, you're pushing toward 42% or 43% of your raise, disappearing to taxes. The emotional reality of this is worth naming. You negotiated for that raise. You felt proud when you got it. You told your partner the good news, and then the first paychecks came, and the math didn't match the number you'd celebrated. That confusion is not stupidity. It's a gap between how salaries are communicated and how taxes actually work. Almost nobody explains this connection, so almost everyone gets hit by it unprepared. The cleaner way to think about it, your raise doesn't get taxed at your bracket. Your raise gets taxed at your effective marginal rate, which is your bracket plus FICA plus whatever deductions you lose along the way. That number is often 30% to 45% depending on your income level and which phase-out zones you're in. Let me map out where the biggest traps actually sit so you know if you're vulnerable. The education loan interest deduction trap sits between $175,000 and $205,000 for married couples filing jointly. If your household income is anywhere in that $30,000 range, a raise can trigger sudden deduction loss. The child tax credit trap is larger and deeper. It starts disappearing at $400,000 and completely phases out at $440,000. This one matters because the credit is $2,000 per child. If you have 3 kids, you have $6,000 at stake. A raise that pushes you across that threshold can cost you hundreds or even thousands in lost credits. For self-employed people and business owners, there's a qualification income threshold for the Section 199A deduction at $407,450 for married couples filing jointly. That's the qualified business income deduction, a 20% deduction on business income. If you're below that threshold, you get it. If you cross it, the deduction starts phasing out over a $100,000 income range. Again, a raise puts you closer to losing a major tax benefit. The practical consequence is this. If you're at $190,000 and you negotiate a $25,000 raise to $215,000, that entire raise doesn't get taxed uniformly. The first $15,000 faces the education loan interest phase-out. The next $10,000 might hit the 24% federal bracket. You're not getting a simple calculation. You're walking through multiple tax zones with your raise. Now here's where most people get trapped in their thinking. They plan their finances around the salary number, not the take-home number. They see $100,000 salary and think they can afford a certain lifestyle. They get a $10,000 raise and think they can upgrade something, but they only actually get $7,000 of it after taxes. The gap between the number they heard and the money that actually arrived creates a shortfall later. This is one of the reasons people making 6 figures still report living paycheck to paycheck. The system takes more than they planned for, and they don't adjust fast enough. Let me show you how different business structures change the math entirely. A marketing manager earning $100,000 W-2 salary, who gets a $10,000 raise, keeps roughly $7,035 of it. That same person, if they were a 1099 contractor earning $100,000 in net self-employment income, only keeps roughly $6,304 of a $10,000 increase. The difference is $731. That gap compounds across every raise, every bonus, every increase in income. Over 10 years, that's a measurable difference in wealth building. But there's a strategy that changes this math, electing S-corporation status. An S-corp lets you split income differently. You take a reasonable W-2 salary, and then take the rest as corporate distributions. The W-2 portion gets hit with payroll taxes. The distribution portion doesn't. So on that same $10,000 increase, if you can structure it as an $8,000 W-2 salary increase and a $2,000 distribution increase, your total FICA tax drops from $1,396 to roughly $612. You save $784 on taxes. This only works if you're already earning enough to justify it, and it requires consistent, reasonable salary documentation. But for serious business owners, this is one of the biggest tax optimization levers available. The phase-out zones matter enough that they deserve a visual map in your mind. Imagine an income spectrum from $0 to $500,000. Mark the zone from $175,000 to $205,000 for education loan interest. Mark the zone from $400,000 to $440,000 for child tax credits. Mark the zone from $407,450 to $507,450 for the qualified business income deduction. Some of these zones overlap. If you're earning $410,000 and you get a $20,000 raise to $430,000, you're walking through multiple phase-out zones at the same time. Your education loan deduction is already gone, but you're in the middle of the child tax credit phase-out, and you're deep in the QBI deduction phase-out. A single raise can trigger losses across multiple tax benefits simultaneously. This is the cumulative trap that creates those $100,000 income earners who feel broke. It's not that they're spending badly, it's that they're losing more to taxes than they realized. Across multiple invisible mechanisms, the state tax layer makes this even more complex. If you live in California and earn $200,000 with a $10,000 raise, your federal calculation might show you keeping just $6,800, but California's state income tax adds another 93% on top. That's another $930 on your raise. Your real take-home just dropped to $5,870. That's a 41% effective rate, not the 30% federal math suggests. Living in Florida or Texas where there's no state income tax, you keep the extra $930. Over a career, that geographic choice can mean hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax savings. Most people never factor this into where they accept jobs or whether they'd move. Here's how to calculate your real effective marginal rate on a raise, the accurate way that actually matters. First, identify which federal tax bracket your income falls into using the official 2026 rates. Then add 765% for FICA taxes. Then check whether you're in any phase-out zones for deductions or credits you currently claim. If you are, calculate how much of your deduction or credit you'd lose with the raise. With the raise, multiply that loss by your marginal tax rate. Add that to your federal and FICA calculation. That's your real effective marginal rate. Most people's real number is 5% to 15% higher than what they think. A person in the 22% bracket usually thinks they keep 78% of a raise. Their real take-home is often closer to 65% to 70%. Once all the pieces are counted, that 8% to 13% gap is thousands of dollars over time. Now here's the practical relief. There are 3 straightforward ways to reduce the tax hit on raises before they even happen. The first is maximizing tax-deferred retirement contribution. A 401k contribution reduces your adjusted gross income dollar for dollar. The 2026 limit is $23,500 per person. If you're getting a $10,000 raise, and you increase your 401k contribution by $10,000 in that same year, your taxable income doesn't rise by $10,000. It stays the same. You've effectively sheltered the entire raise from immediate federal taxation. You still pay FICA taxes on it, but you've eliminated the federal tax impact. That's worth roughly $2,200 on a $10,000 raise in the 22% bracket. The math is straightforward. Every dollar you contribute to a traditional 401k reduces federal taxes by your marginal rate. A health savings account works the same way if you're on a high-deductible health plan. The 2026 individual limit is roughly $4,300. That's another potential $1,000 in tax savings on a raise if you're in the 22% bracket. The second strategy is managing deduction phase-outs through timing and donor-advised funds. If you're in a phase-out zone and you're charitably inclined, you can bunch charitable donations into 1 year. When your income is higher, this increases your itemized deductions in that year and can push you below a phase-out threshold for other benefits. A donor-advised fund lets you make the tax-deductible donation immediately, but distribute the actual money to charities over multiple years. This smooths the income effect across years and keeps you below certain threshold. It's complex, but for someone losing $2,500 in education loan interest deduction, the tax savings might be $550 to $600. That's worth optimizing. The third strategy is the S-corporation election for self-employed people and business owners. This one requires professional setup and ongoing complexity, but the math can save 7% to 15% in FICA taxes, depending on income level and how you structure the salary distribution. For someone netting $150,000 in self-employment income and getting a $10,000 raise, an S-corp election could save $700 to $1,050 in taxes every year. That compounds significantly. All of these strategies require planning before the raise actually lands. You can go back and change 2024 S taxes in 2025, but you can plan for 2026 and beyond, knowing exactly how much you're actually keeping. Most people don't do this planning, which is why they feel surprised by the take-home number. Here's the specific action step that changes this. Before you accept or celebrate a raise, calculate your effective marginal rate first. Use a tax calculator that includes deduction and credit phase-outs, not just the basic bracket. Plug in your exact filing status, income, state of residence, and any itemized deductions or credits you claim. Let the calculator show you the real take-home number. Then share that number with your family. When you discuss the raise, instead of saying I got a $10,000 raise, say I got a $10,000 raise, which means $6,800 more in actual take-home per year. That's the number that actually affects your life. The other $3,200 isn't disappearing arbitrarily. It's going to federal taxes, FICA, state taxes, and deduction phase-outs. Understanding that breakdown removes the mysterious feeling and replaces it with clarity. Most people find that clarity alone reduces financial anxiety. You're not losing money through bad choices. You're losing it through a system that works exactly as designed. Once you see the design, the stress shifts from why am I so bad with money to how do I minimize what the system takes. That's a fundamentally different mindset. The second mistake people make with raises is not adjusting their W-4 withholding. They get a raise, but they don't update their W-4 at their employer. Throughout the year, their employer withholds based on the old income assumptions. By April of the next year, they get a huge refund. That feels good emotionally, like surprise money. But it's actually bad financially. You lent the IRS thousands of dollars all year with zero interest. The better approach is adjusting your W-4 every time your income changes significantly. The IRS has a W-4 calculator online. Input your raise, your spouse's income if applicable, your deductions and credits. It tells you the exact withholding that eliminates or minimizes your refund. Then you file a new W-4 with your employer. This keeps your take-home steady throughout the year instead of having it dip and spike. Third mistake, not checking if you've crossed into a new phase-out zone. If you were safely below the $175,000 education loan interest threshold, and now you're at $180,000 after a raise and a bonus, you've entered the phase-out zone. Your deduction is still available, but it's shrinking. Most people don't adjust their tax planning for this. They file their return the same way they always have, and don't realize they lost a major deduction. A quick annual check, especially if your income has grown significantly, protects you from this. Fourth mistake, ignoring state tax in the decision to accept a raise. If you're in California and someone offers you a $10,000 raise, that 93% state tax means you only keep $5,870, not $6,800. If you could negotiate a remote work arrangement that lets you relocate to Texas or Florida where there's no state income tax, you're protecting another $930 per year. That's worth negotiating for alongside the salary number. The raise itself matters less than where you are when you earn it. These four mistakes are practical and fixable. Most people who understand them correct course immediately. They update their W-4s, they check for phase-outs, they consider state tax and relocation decisions. The financial impact of these corrections accumulates faster than most people expect. 3 months of proper W-4 withholding can mean an extra $1,500 to $2,000 of monthly cash flow that previously went to overpayment. That money can go towards savings or investments where it actually grows instead of sitting with the IRS. Here's the final piece that ties all of this together into one cohesive principle. Your raises don't get taxed at your bracket. They get taxed at your effective marginal rate, which includes your bracket plus FICA plus whatever deductions and credits you lose along the way. That number is usually 30% to 45%, depending on where you fall on the income spectrum and which phase-out zones you've entered. Knowing that number before you commit to lifestyle changes based on the raise is the foundation of financial clarity. You're not bad with money if $10,000 only nets you $5,800. You're exactly the person the tax code designed its marginal rate structure to impact. Once you see that, you stop blaming yourself and start optimizing. And optimization, understanding the exact mechanics and reducing them strategically, is what moves you from feeling broke at six figures to actually building wealth. 3 things to remember from this. First, your raise gets taxed at your effective marginal rate, not your bracket. Second, phase-out zones cost you deductions and credits without any bracket change. Third, your real take-home from a raise is usually 15% to 40% less than the gross number. Download a tax rate calculator that includes phase-outs and run your actual numbers. Input your income, filing status, and state to see your real effective marginal rate. That single number changes how you plan for income increases for the rest of your career. Share this with someone who just got a raise so they understand where the money actually goes.